welcome everyone. Again, this is our second Thursday discussion. Our topic today is digital health. And we're so excited to welcome a very exciting guest speaker today, who we will announce shortly. And I wanted to also remind everyone that our Thursday sessions are open to the public. You can tune in any Thursday, invite your friends and family. We have, we've had some great speakers already last Thursday and today, and we'll have more lined up for you in the coming weeks. So this is, again, our second in a series of 5 discussions that we'll be having with leaders in these high growth fields, such as climate resilience. That was last week. Digital health is today. And then we're going to have a discussion about robotics, semiconductors, and aviation. So you can find all of our past panels on YouTube, including panel discussions that we've had in past years. We had a lot of really great ones last year as well, on topics like designing communities and helping people on the planet and more. So definitely check out our YouTube channel. So I'll start out here with a couple of announcements. First, if you haven't already, please be sure to head over to our Instagram to check out the winners of last week's contest. And for Jessica, who's our guest speaker today, our students have, in the program, they've started building a kind of a special profile for themselves on RePicture, and they've all done incredible work. We just enjoyed so much reading everybody's profiles, and they started this week focusing on, last week we talked about branding, and so we focused on writing your story. And then over the next several weeks, we'll be researching and publishing articles on RePicture about real-world STEM projects, digging in a little deeper to learn more about a field of interest, and then sharing the work that they've done in their school and in their internships and STEM clubs. And this all becomes part of their sort of portfolio of work that they can use, on job applications and university applications and, programs that they may be applying to, as our past students have done. So thank you everyone for the wonderful job you did this week. And we look forward to sharing. I think Lindsay is going to drop in the chat at some point in our discussion today, a link to a page we started for this summer's program. And so all the students that are involved in this program are tagged on there. So you can, Jessica, you can go to that page and meet all of the students that are part of the program and read their stories. And pretty soon you'll be able to see all the amazing projects that they're going to be working on this summer.
Awesome.
So thanks also to everyone that signed up to be on a team. We're also going to have team projects where teams of students will come together to work on researching and publishing articles on our platform about real-world STEM projects. So I just want to quickly announce the teams here. So we have 5 teams. So just take a note who your peer mentor is. That's the most important thing for today. And you can see who you're teamed with. And I'll show the other teams here in just a second, just give everyone a chance to write those down. And really, I just want to give you a quick overview of our plan for the teams. So many of you mentioned that you could stay on for a session. So this coming Tuesday, plan to stay on after our session to meet with your team and your peer mentor, your assigned peer mentor. So that'll be your kickoff meeting where you can bring projects to that meeting that you are interested in and propose them to your team, and you'll all kind of look at all your options and decide on a project you want to work on together. And then next week, as part of the assignment, you can publish an article about a project together, and then we'll have contests for team projects included in next week's assignment as well. So let me show you the other teams blue and green. Note your peer mentor. And like I said, stay on next Tuesday. if you said you could stay on. If you were not able to stay on after a session, we'll reach out to you about setting up a time that your team can meet. So if you didn't get your team, that's okay. Just message us after this, and we'll also email you all to let you know what team you're on. I also want to highlight that you can find all of our past panelists on our on RePicture. So they all have profiles on RePicture, and you can go there to learn more about them, and also to find the session that they did, the recording of the session they did with us. And for any students joining us for the first time today, it's not too late to register or join us. All the sessions are recorded. All the assignments are designed so that you can do them at your own pace alongside your regular job or internship or anything else you may be doing this summer, including vacations, fun vacations you're going on. So the program is really meant to be flexible and to fit and adapt to your schedule. And we really want, everything that we're doing to be available to you and something you can partake in, because everything we're doing is of great value to you and as you explore careers and decide what path you're going to choose to go on. So we have a lot of really exciting things left in the summer, and you can also catch up from what we've already done. And finally, I'm going to turn it over to Mose to introduce our amazing speaker today. So thank you also to Mose for bringing Jessica to us today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mose.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be with you again today. Super excited to introduce you to one of the warmest and most selfless people in STEM. Me and Jessica, we first met while volunteering to support first-time entrepreneurs in Los Angeles as they transition from building ideas to building startups and businesses. At the time, our program was running, growing so fast that we couldn't even manage it. And in no time, Jessica came over and organized everything for us and was able to put us on track and allow us to focus on mentorship and helped us grow the program globally to be one of the most successful global programs. But Jessica is not new to volunteering and activism, from entrepreneurship to the Peace Corps, from Los Angeles to Ravine in Ukraine. She's always looking for ways to help, to support, and to contribute. She has a bachelor in communication and political science from Santa Clara University, studying in Germany, South Africa, and Italy, a master in public health from UCLA, where she was also a student representative for the Community Health Science Department, and a master of business administration from UCLA Anderson School of Management, where she received the honor of John Wooden Global Leadership Fellow and a Forte Foundation Fellow. She's now working on accelerating the growth, funding, space, talent, and innovation in life science ecosystem of Los Angeles at BioscienceLA. Jessica is one of the few people I know who will go outside of her comfort zone to challenge the status quo, help others, and build a better world. And Jessica traveled to more than 50 countries. She's an avid runner, completing 11 marathon and triathlon. A true Iron Woman with a golden global heart. I am so honored and proud to call her a friend, and now so are you. I can spend the entire session telling you about Jessica, but I know all of you have a lot of questions for her. So I will hand it to Jerry to take it from here and welcome your new friend, Jessica Barnette.
Thanks, Maz. I hope I can live up to that introduction.
No doubt.
And I'll stop my screen share.
Awesome.
Here and turn it over to Jerry, who will be moderating our questions, or many questions for Jessica. So Jesse, you'll have to tell us if we need us to slow down, or just give us a signal if we need to.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in,
Okay, great. Last week we had so many that it's like, okay. So
I'm ready.
All right.
In the hot seat.
I'll turn it over to Jerry.
Awesome. Well, then with our first question, Can you tell us your story of how you got to where you are today, such as early education, to your first job, or anything that influenced your direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. I'm really excited to be here and learn more sort of about RePicture and the program and support all of you on your career journeys. So my background really sort of started from when I was little. I was born in Hawaii. I moved to Maryland when I was 2 years old, and then moved to San Diego when I was 6, and then spent the majority of my childhood growing up in San Diego. And my dad was in the Navy, and so we were sort of ingrained in me sort of this idea of service to others and giving back when you can, and sort of dedicating yourself to sort of something bigger, something larger than yourself. And so throughout high school, I was always volunteering. I was always finding a way to give back, whether that could be, in a large way or a small way. It didn't matter. I just found that passion for really sort of helping support others. And that led me to go to college at Santa Clara University up in Northern California. And I pursued a bachelor's in communications and political science. And Jerry and I sort of talked before everybody else joined the conversation today, but really communications was sort of my passion. I really enjoyed learning about how people connect, how we communicate, what are the different communication styles, what's most effective in certain situations and not effective in others. And it was really sort of that connection piece of we communicate to connect with others. And the political science sort of degree came into handy because I was also interested in how, international relations, how governments interact with people, how do they communicate with sort of the larger population, and what are those dynamics like? And I was able to study abroad. I lived abroad for about 1.5 years when I was doing my undergraduate work. I spent a summer in Rome, Italy, and that was really my first time kind of leaving the country. And that just opened my eyes to really sort of living and breathing history. I felt, in Europe, there's just history everywhere, and I had never experienced that before. And then I spent 6 months in South Africa in Cape Town, and then another 6 months in Germany, where I was studying the politics of the European Union. And it was just very sort of dichotomous. South Africa was sort of this emerging country. They had sort of their own history with apartheid, and navigating sort of after that, that whole experience, and seeing sort of the multicultural, of the society, and how, different people were relating to others. And then going to Europe and studying sort of the geography of the European Union and many different countries, trying to work and live together and become this larger sort of entity. And then, when I came back, I finished my degree, and I realized, I don't really know what I want to do. I was sort of at this sort of pivot point where I was like, all right, I'm just supposed to go off and get a job. But I had just had this, amazing year abroad of experiencing the world, that I realized, I think I could get more out of, my career by living and pushing myself even further sort of out of my comfort zone. And so that's what led me to want to join the Peace Corps. And I lived in Western Ukraine for 2 years and was teaching English as my primary sort of project. And then, in my free time, because, I had summers off, I sort of, would work, kind of the 9 to 5, and then I'd have a lot of extra time on my hands. I got involved with some HIV and AIDS sort of public health awareness. And it was there that I really understood more about healthcare from a non-clinical standpoint. And that sort of launched me into this whole idea of how do you manage, how do you run, how do you evaluate programs that are really developed for the community, by the community, and then you're sort of step in as a supporter, whether that's financially or whether that's just sort of from a managerial experience or sort of an oversight experience. So I came back to the US, settled into Los Angeles. I'm still in LA. I went to UCLA for my master's in public health and really enjoyed putting together sort of the experiences that I had in Ukraine, but not knowing really what I was doing maybe when I was in Ukraine, and then coming back and learning sort of the theories behind, why I was doing certain things while I was there. So maybe I did that a little bit backwards, but it worked out. It worked out okay. And then I started working at UCLA. They had an international center for medical students, and that worked sort of within the larger sort of UCLA healthcare system. And it was there that I realized that, I do have this strong passion for, working with people who have an international sort of focus or have an international presence, who are open to learning, who are open to sort of innovating, trying new things. And I had a really great mentor, and she just was like, what's next for you? Because this isn't the end of your career. What is next? How do we help and support you get to sort of that next level? And I had told her, one thing that I regret not doing when I was in my public health program was taking a business class. I didn't really understand, and I probably was a bit intimidated by, finance and sort of statistics and, understanding really the basis foundations of running a business. And so she encouraged me to go up and talk to the business school, and I ended up falling in love with the people that I was meeting and the conversations that we were having. And that led me to want to enroll in the part-time program. So I did night school for 3 years to do my MBA. And I thought that that was a really good complement to working and then being able to apply what I was learning in the classroom at night the next day in my job. It was a very long program, but sort of the connections that I was able to make and just the opportunities, for doors opening as a result of having that experience were really great. And to answer your sort of initial question of like, how I got to where I am, when I was working at UCLA in the medical school, I knew that that was sort of good as a temporary position, but I knew that I wasn't in business school. I wasn't meeting what I wanted to meet. I was comfortable, but I knew that I don't want just comfort for the rest of my life. I want to be energized. And I want to be excited. I want to, feel like I'm doing something that's making a difference. And so I actually left my full-time job. I took an internship. My family was like, you're leaving, a decent paying job with benefits to go to, sort of a paid job, but it was close to minimum wage with no benefits. Are you sure that that's what you want to do? And it was really me taking that gamble on myself of saying, I'm excited about where I am, and I'm excited about sort of the trajectory that I'm on. I don't know what that trajectory is, but I believe in myself. And I think that was the most important piece. And sort of from there, I sort of met people that were sort of on the innovation side of healthcare. And that sort of led me sort of working at digital health startups to supporting digital health startups and accelerator programs, and then sort of landing, where I am here at BioscienceLA.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think it's great to hear about sort of how journeys can develop in those different branches, how you can sort of branch off into something you weren't really expecting in the beginning. So could you tell us a little bit more about what you do now, like what you do with BioscienceLA?
Yeah, sure. So BioscienceLA, for those who have not heard of it, was initially started back in 2018. It was sort of thought of as a concept for economic development within the LA area, so greater LA area. So in 2018, sort of LA County got together, and I think they recognized maybe 8 or 9 different areas that they wanted to invest in. And one of those was sort of the life sciences. And as a result, sort of BioscienceLA was conceptualized and sort of made into an organization to be sort of this one-stop shop for the life sciences. And life sciences is a very broad term. So we like to think of it sort of between biotech, medtech, and digital health, and really sort of any kind of healthcare player that is focused on innovation. And so BioscienceLA, we have a physical space in Culver City. It's actually a pretty cool building. They repurposed. It was a county courthouse, and then it was decommissioned back in the early 90s and was used sort of as an ad hoc space, but they decommissioned or they repurposed the building for us. So we have a physical location. It's great for events. And then we also have our offices here. And I was brought on board in almost 2 years ago in July of 2020 to be sort of the first full-time hire and help the first permanent CEO kind of get his feet running, start implementing, figuring out what our strategy is, what programs are we going to start implementing, how we're going to do that, while also construction on the building was finalizing. So we were like, wearing our hard hats and, going to meet the project managers. But then now I've sort of moved into more of a strategy and operations role. So we've launched a couple programs. We've been able to expand our staff a bit. So I have a bit of a manager role, but then also, thinking more strategically long-term, what are we trying to obtain? How are we going to get there? Sort of what are those metrics that we're evaluating towards? And then also operationally, how are we doing things? Is it most efficient? If it's not, what can we do differently? How can we improve those processes to make it a smooth journey?
That's great. Like with BioscienceLA now, and sort of being in that med tech, biotech, and digital health sort of career path, what does a typical career look like, do you think? Or is there can you even say that there is a typical that exists within the field?
Yeah, I am going to err on there's no typical career, I think. In sort of med tech, digital health, biotech, there's traditional pathways in terms of the technical side of things. So if you want to be in the lab, there's a very straightforward sort of road to get you to working in the lab. You can't really skirt around sort of that lab experience building, up into a career. However, I would say there's opportunities that always come up that are looking for individuals, who might have transferable skills. And I think I work a lot with students, who are interested in pursuing internship opportunities. And I always tell them, it's okay if you don't have, this exact experience. You've had experience either volunteering or working somewhere else, or even in the classroom where you led projects or, sort of managed other students or, whatever, that you can transfer those skills into valuable experience. And so for me specifically, I'm more on the business side of things now, but my role is to support entrepreneurs. And I think anybody can be an entrepreneur. I think if you are thinking of things, of how to do something better or a problem that you're solving, there's many opportunities to get connected to sort of test out what your hypotheses are for improving those things or solving that problem. And I think that's what excites me sort of about my career, is that I get to help others, on their journey. Sort of my tagline is, empowering others and supporting others. And I think sort of in my role, as long as I'm always having that sort of as a basis of what my job position is, I think that's a career or position that I want to be involved in.
That's awesome. That actually leads me into the next question of how you see digital health field helping people. And I know that you've sort of been on both sides of more like in the field and then also more on that business side. So how would that help people? What does that look like to you?
Yeah. When I think of digital health, I really sort of break it down into sort of those tools that can really improve not just sort of the ability or sort of the accuracy of diagnosing and treating, but also just enhancing, the delivery of healthcare. And I think our healthcare system is so broken in the US compared to other countries that there's great opportunities to, find ways to improve that. And so for digital health specifically, there's a cost of it, because I think innovation is very forward thinking, and digital health, you always want to be the first to sort of monopolize the market. But then there's also some cautious approaches that need to happen. You need to make enough forward, trajection or movement, but then you also want to make sure that you're always sort of listening to your customers, and you're always figuring out that, what you're solving for, is that really a problem to a group of people, or is that just a single problem? Because if it's just a single problem, it's not going to be widely accepted by everybody. So I think sort of for digital health, like the career path is accepting of everyone, because any company, whether they're digital health or med tech, or even biotech, has sort of the technical people, whether that's on the tech side as product managers or software engineers. But then they also have the non-technical people. They have the management, they have HR, they have, people that are running the office operations. So I'm not sure if that answered your question specifically, but I think, it kind of, I wish I had known that maybe when I was a student, is that, you say life sciences, and that doesn't just mean, a person in a lab coat working, in a wet lab. It's, also people working on the legal team and in HR and, program management and supporting the operations of the work that's being done inside the lab.
Yeah, that does answer my question. And I think it sort of conveys to the students too, that there isn't necessarily one way to do things, or there's not like one typical career path that you would have to follow. And there's just a lot of different ways in which how your career can look within the same field.
Yeah, and even just to add on to that point, I think the diversity of skills is something that's super important, I think, for an organization to have. So, I always tell students, you're interviewing for positions, but you're also interviewing that company as well, if that's a place that you would want to work. And so I'm always fearful of companies that hire sort of cookie cutter replicas of them, of the workers, because then you just have no diversity of experience. And yeah, it's sort of the diversity of, who the person is, but it's also like, what are their career journeys? What are their life journeys that have brought them here? And how can you use that as a strength for the work that's being done?
Right. As you've been in the digital health field, what do you think the future of digital health looks like, or what it will look like, and what areas of this field are expanding the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think something that excites me the most is just the amount of data that we're able to have now. And I think the future of that is, how do we make that data meaningful, and how do we sort of parse out, the information that really can make valuable impacts, either sort of on diagnosing or treating, diseases. I'm thinking back to like when I was in high school, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have iWatches. I think maybe Fitbit was around, but it was just like Fitbit 101, where it was just literally just like, a pedometer. And so now, now we have sleep tracking, and we have, movement, and we have all of these opportunities to collect data. And I think what excites me is just, what are we going to do with that data? Because, and also, being more mindful of like, are we collecting data just to collect data, or are we collecting data for a purpose? And what is that purpose? And how is it actually going to, more accurately diagnose and treat? So it's also sort of that other side of, how are we evaluating, what is being captured?
That's awesome. Just to sort of move into or go back to sort of how you got to where you are. You spoke about your experiences studying abroad and volunteering, as well as jobs that you did outside of what you had initially been planning to do. So for the students or anyone in general, how would they find out more about careers in digital health?
Yeah, I think Google is your friend. Figure out what meetup groups are happening, and go to anything and everything that excites you, even if nobody else that's going to be there. I guarantee you'll get out of what you put in to those types of experiences. And so, especially being a student, I was saying this earlier before most of the students joined, pulling that student card is really the golden ticket, because everybody, in their careers has once been a student and knows what it's like to go out and to start your journey sort of on your career path. And no one's going to tell you no. They might tell you, I don't have time this week, but, reach out again in 2 weeks. But no one's going to tell you no. And so definitely utilize that card of saying, I'm a student. Do you have 5-10 minutes to talk with me? So that's sort of my first kind of tangential sort of advice. But, I think there's, especially now that COVID is sort of waning and people are becoming more comfortable, I guess, sort of with taking on risk of meeting back in person. I think there's meetup groups that are free. There's, if you live or close by to a public university, there's always events that are happening that are open to the public. A lot of times, courses are available online for free, that you can connect with people. You can go to the library. I'm a huge public library fan. You can go to the library and either talk to librarians who might know some, publications that you can look at that they have available, or recommend books if you're interested in a specific area. I think, to grow your network really takes some getting out of your comfort zone of making that sort of taking that first step. But I think if I had done that much earlier in my career, I think my network would be much stronger. And you have nothing to lose. And I get, it can be sometimes, uneasy feeling to make that first move, but you never know what could come of it. And don't be afraid to also ask people, is there anybody else that I should be talking to? Usually sort of at the end of an informational interview session, I always encourage students to ask them, is there anybody else, after our conversation that, maybe I should reach out to, or that you could connect me to, because that's also sort of that snowball effect of, helping just get your foot in the door with different people and organically build these relationships, as opposed to only trying to build relationships when you're looking for a new job, or when you're, pressed for time for a project and need, expert advice or something like that. So the more organically that you can start, I think the better, sort of in the long run.
That's wonderful. It's amazing advice. I think that's sort of how I've gotten to where I've ended up being, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And through different relationships that I've formed along the way, I feel like that's really, it's been really helpful in like my career development and my path.
Yeah, and just one other thing that I thought of as you were sharing that, don't be afraid to volunteer too. Everybody has limited resources. Time is a limited resource. So obviously I wouldn't say volunteer all of your time, but I think if there's something that interests you, feel free to reach out to people and say, hey, can I spend, an hour or two shadowing you or helping out in any way? And that's how Maz and I got connected originally, was because, I was interested in the accelerator, sort of pre-accelerator space, supporting startups as they're starting to grow or initially starting to raise money. And I just happened to show up one day and was like, I have no idea what I'm going to experience. I don't know who I'm going to meet. And it's been, such a strong community for me here in Los Angeles. And if I hadn't taken sort of that first step and been, willing to give a little bit of time, then, I never would have met those people or had those experiences. So I would definitely say, if you're not volunteering yet, find something that maybe you're a little bit interested in, that you can bring your skill set, but also you can learn from that experience as well.
Awesome advice. Thank you. So looking back at a lot of, or some different projects that you've worked on, what has been one of your favorites to work on, and why?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little plug here. So it's actually a project that I've been working on at BioscienceLA, and it's called our BioFutures internship program. And essentially, when BioscienceLA started, one of the sort of values of our organization is really sort of this component around diversity. How are we diversifying who's in life sciences? How are we diversifying the pipeline of people who are getting jobs in the life sciences? And so we were able to secure some funding to implement this program, which connects students from underrepresented backgrounds with paid internships here sort of in the greater LA area. And we also offer career development programming. So it's sort of complementing this internship experience, but then also sort of how are we thinking longer term about your career. And we specifically targeted community college students because we felt like, they were maybe really impacted with not having the access or ability to go into a lab space during COVID. And so we recognize, there's great training programs at the community college level, and, those students often get overlooked for four-year university degree students. And so I'm really proud of where we were able to take the program in 2021 when we launched, and sort of where we are now. We were able to secure some additional funding to bring on a project manager to sort of help me manage the day-to-day. But yeah, it's open. I think the link was put into the chat, but it's open to any undergraduate student. If you're a high school student, I'm sorry, we can't take you yet, but keep the program in mind and please apply after your first sort of semester or quarter of school. But yeah, it's a great program. I think last year we funded 30, I think it was 32 internships. And then this year, our goal is to fund 100. And so it's really sort of helping find, it's essentially creating a marketplace where companies can source talent and students can apply. And then we take the burden off the company of paying for the internship to happen. And so who doesn't love, students being able to work and provide their skills? And then last year we had 3 students who actually got hired full-time from their internships, which we weren't even expecting. So that was an unexpected, welcomed finding. But yeah, I'll put, that has been a lot of time and sort of energy has gone into that project. And I knew very little about the community college system, but since sort of starting that and growing that, it's just been a really phenomenal experience to help, see how to support students, what works for them, what works for companies, and then being able to make those internships happen.
Awesome, thank you. We will be sharing a flyer with more information about BioFutures in our newsletter that'll come out on Monday. Great. And Mo's also put a link in the chat as well.
Perfect.
And before I get into this next question, I wanted to open up the chat also for questions that anyone who's in attendance would like to ask, so that we can give people time to sort of think about what they want to ask and also give you time to think as well. But for our next question, you've been touching on this the entire time, basically about this like self-development, like finding the career path that you felt is fit right for you and sort of unlocking your potential. So this is like a 2-part question, but and maybe you can go into more detail if you've shared about this already, but have you ever taken a leap professionally or in your career journey after learning more about yourself, and in what ways has that made you grow?
Great question. The first part of that question, yeah, I touched upon it a little bit, I think in my opening or early on, about when I was at business school and I was working a job where, it wasn't, I was good at it, but it wasn't challenging me. And I sort of had hit that plateau of where I knew what I could do to kind of skate by, but I was losing the energy and the motivation and really the passion for showing up to want to do that work. And that's when I decided to end that job and take the internship. And really, I would say the leading up to that point, sort of my mindset was seeing my friends who were also in school with me doing the same things to switch kind of even industries. So, going from finance into like entertainment or something. So switching kind of big gaps. And I was switching more from sort of academia to sort of a digital sort of media company, but I was working within their HR department and helping them sort of finalize their health and wellness strategy programming that they were going to be offering in the following year. So it was still kind of tied to health and wellness, but it wasn't, as slow moving or progressing as sort of academic healthcare. And it was in that position in my internship that I think really lit a fire under me, because I realized this whole other realm of sort of healthcare innovation. Before that, I hadn't really been too much exposed to sort of the entrepreneurial story or journey. And it was sort of recognizing, how quickly things can move sort of at the startup level. That excited me, and sort of that risk that you were taking on, because, they were a younger company, but then also sort of the outcomes of really being able to create a lot of value for the organization. And so that experience, I think, made me realize, I was limiting myself. And I think any point of my career, I always sort of think back to that. Like, what was I scared of? What made me wait so long to take that step? And I realized that it had to be my decision. It couldn't have been anybody else making that decision. And I think to your point of really sort of sitting and knowing who I was and thinking like, okay, what is my risk tolerance? The idea of like me quitting a secure job to take something that was really not guaranteed, like unguaranteed, because, at the end of the internship, I knew that there wasn't going to be an offer or an opportunity to become full-time. So I would still have to figure out what I was going to be doing after. But I think, I journal a lot. And I think having sort of gone through that process of just thinking through like what makes me happy, what excites me, what doesn't excite me, I think is oftentimes, as I love to think about what I want to be doing, it's also important to evaluate maybe what I don't like doing. So then when opportunities come up, I can sort of weigh those pros and cons of, if it's doing something super into, financial analysis, I don't know if that's going to be the best role for me, but if it's something doing event planning, like, yeah, I love doing that. So I hope that kind of covers the first part of your question of just sort of like that experience of, using what I've learned about myself up until that point, and sort of just taking that jump off the high dive, because, it's scary, but I also knew that I had a strong community around me, and I felt like I had strong mentors as well, supporting my decision, that even if my family didn't understand it, this other small group of supporters did, and they could encourage me and be like, this is good for you. Like, feeling this sense of discomfort is okay, and that's good. And then I forgot what your second part of the question was. I apologize.
Yeah, so in addition to that, how have you grown, or how has your career field helped you grow?
Yeah, I mean, it was really sort of that experience that I think led me down a path that got me to sort of where I was today. And I think that mindset of being like, I might not know what's going to come out of this opportunity, but I know it's going to enrich me in some way, whether good or bad. It could be a bad experience, and I just know, okay, like, avoid that next time if possible, right? But I think having that experience made me more confident going out into the world of understanding sort of what I'm capable of, and just reassuring me, right? Because I think I had a lot of self-doubt, reassuring me that it's okay to take risks. It's okay to not always have the answer, to know where you're going, but have a plan, and maybe have a backup plan just in case. Because, if something goes awry, that's okay. That's life. Go on to plan B. And if plan B blows up in your face, that's okay too. Go to plan C. And I think, just having that resilience and that grit is really important.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. I think that's really great to hear, especially just when you're going through or trying to figure out what it is that you do want to do. There is a lot of time that you do have to take to reflect and sort of get to know yourself better, and figure out what it is that you enjoy doing, regardless of whether it's something that you've always done, or trying something new. Mm-hmm. So let's see if we have any questions in the chat. Not yet. So also, if anyone is uncomfortable asking questions, they can message me and I can ask them for you. And another question that we wanted to ask is something that we went over in week 1 was personal brand. Also there's a hand raise. So I will come back to that person. I apologize. I didn't see it. But as you've thought of your personal brand, or if you have, at what point did you start paying attention to that, and how did you build that?
Yeah, I wish I had thought more about this strategically when I was younger. I think I knew sort of who I was, but I think as I started interviewing for positions early on, I think I sort of lost that sense of, I was just excited to get a job that I, would have taken anything. And sort of now I look at opportunities from a way of, who I am, in the sense of, what excites me both professionally and personally, and what are my sort of mission and personal sort of values, and how do those align with the company or organization that I'm either working for or volunteering with, or, people that I'm meeting. I think my personal brand sort of now has evolved from just being kind of cast a wide net to being a little bit more tailored into some areas. So, you know, I do enjoy, I think I mentioned this sort of like my tagline of just, I really enjoy empowering people, whether that's entrepreneurs, whether that's students, whether that's, you know, family or friends. Like, how can I help lift that burden or lift you while you go through something, or while you attempt to do something. And I think now that's kind of tied into sort of my personal life, but then also professionally. And I think, you know, having that experience of knowing other people empowered me when I took sort of that leap of faith when I left my full-time position to now, I think has just reassured me of like, that's really what I'm excited about doing and working with people, sort of on the management side of, you know, bolstering others to have success. And then that allows me to also feel successful.
Awesome. Thank you. One of our, since we're getting close on time, the next sort of one of our last questions. How have the things that you've done outside of work impacted your career? Like running, or also that you've traveled a lot all over the world. So how has that influenced your work and the way that you approach your job?
Yeah, again, great question. Your questions today have been phenomenal. I think something that has always been important to me is living an active lifestyle. And I think that's a way that I feel most connected to people is, you know, walking with them, running with them, hiking with them, engaging in some sort of activity, if possible, is a way that I communicate well with people. And that sort of goes back to, you know, I studied communication in college, and I just realized that that's a way that I'm able to connect on a deeper, more meaningful way. I've recently got into sort of endurance sports. I got into triathlons last year. And I think really it kind of just stemmed from, it was something that I always wanted to do, but I was a little bit afraid of. And then I realized, what am I afraid of? And it was because, you know, I had never really ridden a bicycle aside from like a beach cruiser, and the thought of riding 30 plus, 50 plus miles on a bike just seemed rather boring to me, to be honest. But again, I realized it was an opportunity for growth and to challenge myself. And I really love sort of the routine that it sets for me. And I think that carries over also into kind of my career, because I've had to learn to multitask. I've had to learn how to manage different things, manage competing priorities. And I think triathlon has allowed me to also do the same, right? Like, I know my training plan, and I know that my days fill up. And so if I'm not getting up in the morning, then that means I have to, you know, switch around my evening plan to be able to train. And so it's just sort of, you know, how am I being most effective as well as efficient with my time? And I think that's also similar with sort of the operational side of my job, is how are we doing things? How are we evaluating it to ensure that it's, you know, we think it's being efficient, but is it really being efficient? Is there a better way to do it? How do we improve that process? And I think, you know, if you're not familiar with triathlons, you swim, and then you transition into bike, and then you transition into a run. And I think my first triathlon, you know, my transition times were like 10 minutes long. And I didn't really think about much about it, because I was just, you know, okay, I'm gonna like relax, get out of the water, you know. And then someone was like, if you put in a little bit of extra effort and training, you can actually train for your transition times. And I was able to, you know, cut my transition times in half, just because I was more focused and aware of, oh, like this is something that I could do a little bit differently. And it wasn't, you know, 5 minutes is still a really long transition time when you're looking at the elites who are in, you know, 45 seconds, but I'm not trying to win any races here. It's just, you know, purely pleasure. But I think just sort of having that mindset of, what am I doing? How am I doing? Is there a better way or more efficient way that I can be doing it? And then trying it, being willing to try something new just to see what the results are. And if it was terrible, then, you know, maybe find a tweak, figure out what went wrong, and then, you know, navigate around that and switch back or do something else, try something else. You know.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And that's also just interesting, because I did like the kid triathlons when I was like really small.
Awesome. You should get back into it.
I'll think about it. They're so long.
Yeah.
So then for our next question, Lindsay is wanted to ask you one as well. So the floor is open.
Hi, thank you again for coming to speak with us today and talk about your journey. So my question is, what would you say is the biggest barrier to innovation in healthcare?
Ooh, biggest innovation, biggest challenge, right? You said biggest challenge to innovation. You know, I think we're rather lucky being in the US that we have such a strong focus and support of sort of entrepreneurial journeys of trying new things. I think a challenge right now, just sort of in the economic times that we're going towards, I think funding might go down a little bit. And I think funding can always be a challenge. But I would say, you know, I think from my experience and sort of what I've seen, I think there's pivot points. And I think COVID really helped make a stance on showing the importance of investing in public health initiatives and doing more sort of preventative programs upstream, as opposed to going sort of, you know, sort of medicine and sort of the treatment of things. I think a challenge with that, I think, is we can flex a certain amount, but I think our systems are set up to go back to sort of that treatment focus. And so I think a challenge right now is that the healthcare system is so large and rather broken that a lot of money is poured into it, but maybe not a lot of progress is shown. And so it's also figuring out, how do we tie resources together to be, you know, as effective, you know, as possible. I'm not really sure if that answers your question specifically on one challenge, but I think there's a lot of challenges to sort of innovating healthcare. And I think with many challenges comes, you know, many opportunities for innovation. And so I think, you know, the time is right. If you have an idea, if you have, you know, a solution to a problem, I think it's awesome that our society supports sort of that entrepreneurial journey, because I know in other countries that's not as, you know, supported, and it's more difficult to be an entrepreneur or to want to make change. So I would say that that's a positive, at least, of, you know, our challenging healthcare system that we're operating within.
Yeah, your answer does help me better understand. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Lindsay. And with that, we're going to start wrapping up, and we're going to end with our lightning questions. So we have a few. So starting with the first one, what is your favorite genre of reading or book recommendations that you have?
Ooh, love any good autobiography. You know, President Obama's autobiography is really great. Michelle Obama's autobiography is great. Nonfiction, there's a couple books that I think have been really pivotal. Atomic Habits is sort of all about how we manage our time and sort of what our habits are. And Limitless, which is all about sort of unlocking and unleashing your brain's potential. And both those books are very practical. And it was great to see implementing new things that they suggest and seeing the changes. So yeah, but those sort of books I would definitely recommend.
Awesome. Another question is, what skills do you think you have used the most?
Definitely people skills. I'm a people person, although I am an introvert. I love connecting with people. And so whether that's learning how to be an active listener, whether that's, you know, public speaking, or just being vulnerable with sharing, you know, who I am. I think anytime you can learn to show up for someone, I think that's important. So yeah, I would definitely say people skills are something that I use on the regular.
Awesome. Can you tell us about some of your hobbies? I know you touched on like triathlons and running. Any others that you might not have touched on?
I mean, I do love giving back. I love volunteering. Before COVID, you know, I was involved with a dog rescue here in Los Angeles, and I can't have a dog myself in my apartment, but I can go and play with other, other adoptable dogs and help get them, for their forever homes. And then just being with family. I have 2 young nieces and love spending time, spoiling them, but they're not my kids. So once they start crying, I hand them back to my sister and say, I love you, here you go.
Awesome. Is there a fun fact about you, or do you have like a favorite quote?
A favorite quote, I'm probably going to butcher it. I believe it's by Margaret Mead, and it's essentially saying, never underestimate the power of what a small group of dedicated, passionate people can achieve, because really it's those groups of people that are the ones that achieve sort of everything. And I just really like how, it's true. If you can find a group of people, who are your sort of board of advisors, your posse, your go-tos, I think, you'll really put yourself on a successful track. And it's important to have those people in your life, in the good times and in the bad times.
Awesome. And then the last question is there anything else that you would like our program participants to know about you that we did not get to today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always available, to talk, to email with, to connect with on LinkedIn. I'm definitely excited to check out your Repurpose sort of portal and read all of your stories, and, consider me part of your network. So if there's, questions or opportunities that you have that come up and you want to pick my brain on something, feel free to reach out. I'm always available.
Awesome. Well, then that wraps up our discussion today. I want to say thank you so much for spending this hour with us. And I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else has learned a lot and have been inspired, and have maybe don't feel as bad about not knowing exactly what they want to do, and knowing that no path is the same.
No path is straight. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jerry. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. You as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Jessica, and also for confirming a lot of the things that we've been talking about in class in so many ways. So we'll follow up with you after this, and thank you again so much.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me today. It was great to meet all of you, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Great.
Awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.